Charlie woke on Christmas morning to the soft glow of winter light slipping through Sophie's curtains. For a moment she didn't move, letting the warmth of the blankets and the faint scent of cinnamon drift around her. Then she became aware of Sophie beside her, still asleep, her breathing slow and steady. Twinkle had wedged herself between them sometime during the night, purring faintly. Charlie smiled at the sight, a quiet happiness blooming in her chest. It felt surreal yet unquestionably right. Christmas had a strange way of rewriting expectations. Sophie stirred, blinking awake to see Charlie watching her. Instead of pulling back, she smiled, sleepy, sincere, unguarded. They exchanged a soft good morning that carried more meaning than the words should normally hold. For a while they stayed there, talking in hushed voices about dreams, the storm outside, and how unexpected the night had been. Sophie admitted she hadn't felt this calm in months. Charlie confessed she hadn't expected to stay, but now couldn't imagine waking up anywhere else. Twinkle rolled onto her back, demanding affection, pulling them into shared laughter. In the kitchen, they moved around each other with an ease that felt strangely familiar, as though this were a routine they had practiced for years rather than minutes. Charlie brewed coffee while Sophie prepared toast and fruit, occasionally brushing past her with gentle touches that sent small sparks through Charlie's chest. The house smelled of roasted beans, pine, and the lingering sweetness of holiday cookies. Outside, the world was quiet, softened by a thick layer of snow. Inside, everything felt warm, intimate, safe, and filled with possibility. Sophie hesitated only once that morning, when she invited Charlie to join her at her family's Christmas lunch. The question came timidly, as though she feared it might shatter the fragile magic of the moment. Charlie paused, absorbing the weight of the invitation. It wasn't casual. It meant she wasn't just a stranger who returned a cat. She was someone Sophie wanted beside her. Charlie smiled, touched by the vulnerability behind the words, and said yes. Sophie's relief was visible, her heart opening a little more with every breath. The hours before lunch passed in the soft rhythm of getting ready together. Charlie borrowed one of Sophie's sweaters, a cozy cream-colored one that fit her better than expected. Sophie brushed Twinkle's fur while Charlie fixed her hair in the hallway mirror, exchanging teasing remarks and quiet compliments. When it was time to leave, Sophie slipped her hand into Charlie's, testing the gesture. Charlie intertwined their fingers without hesitation. Twinkle watched from the window as they stepped outside, as if ensuring her Christmas matchmaking was complete. Sophie's family welcomed Charlie with warmth, curious, but excited to see Sophie, looking genuinely happy. They asked about the cat, the rescue, the snowstorm, each detail sounding more magical when told out loud. Charlie felt surprisingly at ease, her nervousness fading the more Sophie's thumb brushed reassuring circles on her hand under the table. Throughout the meal, their glances held quiet meaning, promises still forming, but real and steady. Christmas music played softly in the background, blending with laughter and the clinking of plates. It felt like stepping into a new chapter. When they returned to Sophie's house that evening, the sky had deepened into a velvet blue scattered with stars. Twinkle ran to greet them, meowing triumphantly as if demanding a full report. Sophie turned to Charlie, her expression tender and hopeful, and asked if she would stay again, not just for the night, but to see where this new connection might lead. Charlie cupped her cheek, smiling as warmth filled her chest. She said yes, without doubt or hesitation. Outside, Christmas lights shimmered softly, as if celebrating the beginning of something quietly extraordinary. The next morning, they met at Eleanor's apartment to finalize their story. Riley arrived wrapped in a navy scarf, cheeks pink from the cold, and Eleanor greeted her with a notebook filled with details. How they met, how long they'd been dating, what inside jokes they shared. Riley found it both charming and intimidating. Eleanor was meticulous, almost adorably so. They spent hours rehearsing lines, correcting each other, and trying not to laugh at how theatrical it all felt. Their chemistry, even unspoken, was already working. Eleanor insisted on drafting boundaries before anything else. She read them out loud with the seriousness of someone signing a legal contract. No accidental touching. No flirting outside of the performance. No emotional intimacy, unless necessary for the act. Riley took each rule in stride, though she teased Eleanor lightly, which only made her blush. Eleanor wanted control because feelings terrified her. Riley sensed that fear, but didn't press. She simply promised to follow the structure set before them. Later, as they practiced a few couple interactions, Riley noticed how stiff Eleanor was whenever they stood close. Not uncomfortable, just overly aware. Riley softened her voice, relaxing her posture, hoping to make things easier. It worked. Slowly, Eleanor eased into the proximity, even managing to playfully nudge Riley without overthinking it. They rehearsed taking photos that would convince any parent, the kind filled with cozy smiles and near touches. Riley captured one picture where Eleanor laughed for real. That picture changed everything. Eleanor wasn't posing. She was genuinely amused, head tilted back, eyes bright, shoulders relaxed. Riley froze after taking it, staring at the image longer than she intended. Something in her chest tightened in a way she didn't expect. She brushed it off quickly, but the moment lingered. Eleanor didn't notice. She just asked if the lighting was good. Riley nodded, deleting the warmth she felt with a practiced smile. Boundaries, she reminded herself. Rules. They packed together that evening, folding sweaters and scarves into Eleanor's luggage. Riley's suitcase was smaller, filled mostly with simple winter clothes and a book she hoped to read during the trip. Eleanor fussed over matching outfits for photos, while Riley watched her with a mixture of fondness and fascination. They barely knew each other, yet the domesticity came easily. When their fingers brushed accidentally over a pair of gloves, Eleanor pulled away immediately. Riley pretended not to notice the spark. That night, Riley couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at her ceiling, replaying the moment Eleanor laughed in front of her. She kept wondering why something so small had hit her so deeply. It wasn't attraction, she convinced herself. It was the intimacy of pretending, the blurred boundaries of acting like a couple before knowing each other privately. Fake dating had emotional side effects, that was all. Still, she sensed something shifting quietly inside her, like a door cracked open. Eleanor, meanwhile, paced around her apartment after Riley left, overwhelmed by nerves. Bringing someone home, fake or not, felt monumental. She kept reading over her rules, clinging to them like armor. Yet she caught herself smiling at small moments, the way Riley listened, the gentleness in her jokes, the warm steadiness she carried. Eleanor shook her head, scolding herself. Feelings were not part of the deal. She wouldn't break her own rules. At least, that's what she believed. The morning of their departure arrived with a pale winter sunrise streaking across the sky. Riley met Eleanor at the train station, her suitcase rolling behind her as she approached with a small, nervous smile. Eleanor was already there, standing perfectly straight, clutching her ticket like a lifeline. When she saw Riley, her shoulders relaxed a fraction. They boarded together, choosing seats side by side, the hum of the train filling the silence between them. It felt strangely intimate, even before the performance began. As the train pulled away from the city, Eleanor unfolded a detailed itinerary she'd made. Riley tried not to laugh at the color-coded categories, family conversations, shared stories, comfort behaviors, and even backup explanations. It was meticulous to the point of endearing. Riley leaned in to read, their shoulders touching lightly, and Eleanor froze at the closeness. But she didn't move away. She simply cleared her throat and continued explaining, her voice betraying a hint of nervous warmth. Halfway through the journey, Riley suggested they practice some natural interactions, the kind couples do without thinking. Eleanor agreed reluctantly, insisting they keep it strictly scripted. Riley took her hand gently, demonstrating how to hold it without stiffness. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. Their fingers intertwined, hesitant at first, then comfortably. Eleanor felt her heartbeat thudding unevenly. She told herself it was just the unfamiliarity of acting. But deep down, something softer stirred. When an elderly woman across the aisle commented how lovely they looked together, Riley smiled politely and squeezed Eleanor's hand, playing the part perfectly. Eleanor's cheeks warmed instantly. It wasn't the comment. It was the ease with which Riley slipped into the role. Her touch felt natural, grounding, something Eleanor didn't expect to crave. She reminded herself it was all pretend, just a performance. But if it was pretend, why did her chest feel tight in a way she couldn't explain? They arrived at Eleanor's hometown in the late afternoon, greeted by twinkling lights strung across lampposts and wreaths hung on every door. Eleanor's parents were already waiting at the station, waving enthusiastically. Riley took Eleanor's hand again, gently, seeking silent confirmation. Eleanor nodded. The act began. Her mother enveloped them both in a hug, her father smiling proudly, already convinced. Riley played the supportive girlfriend flawlessly. Eleanor tried to breathe normally, but Riley's closeness made everything feel heightened. Inside the car, Eleanor's parents bombarded them with questions. How they met, who made the first move, what drew them together. Riley answered smoothly, adding small, believable details, glancing at Eleanor for validation. Eleanor, caught off guard by Riley's charm, nearly forgot some of the scripted answers. Riley improvised elegantly, easing the pressure. Eleanor felt grateful, maybe too grateful. She noticed her mother watching them warmly in the rearview mirror, and the weight of pretending pressed harder against her chest. When they arrived at Eleanor's childhood home, decorated like a Christmas postcard, Riley instinctively slipped an arm around Eleanor's waist. It was subtle, supportive, and meant to help sell the illusion. But Eleanor's heart reacted differently, thudding, leaping, stumbling. She told herself it was nerves, but the truth lingered quietly beside her. Riley wasn't breaking the rules yet. But Eleanor? She was already losing control far sooner than she ever intended. The house was warm and buzzing with holiday energy, the scent of pine and cinnamon filling every corner. Eleanor guided Riley inside, introducing her to extended family members who had already gathered for an early dinner. Riley's smile never wavered. She greeted everyone with an effortless charm that made Eleanor's relatives adore her instantly. Eleanor watched in awe, realizing Riley was even better at the act than she expected. Maybe too good. Every time Riley touched her arm or leaned close, Eleanor's stomach flipped in ways she couldn't admit. During dinner, Eleanor's aunt asked how they realized they liked each other. Riley jumped in without missing a beat, telling a story about a rainy afternoon and a shared umbrella. It was entirely fictional, but she told it with such warmth that even Eleanor found herself drawn into the lie. Riley's eyes flickered to Eleanor's midway through, soft and deliberate, as if the story held truth beneath the surface. Eleanor felt her breath catch. The moment was supposed to be fake, yet something inside her unraveled. When dessert arrived, Eleanor excused herself to the kitchen to breathe. She gripped the counter, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Riley wasn't doing anything wrong. She was acting just like they agreed. Eleanor was the one feeling too much, reading too deeply into every touch, every glance. She repeated her rules silently, reminding herself why they existed. Yet the boundaries she'd built so carefully felt flimsy now, trembling under the weight of Riley's authenticity. Riley found her in the kitchen a few minutes later, carrying 2 glasses of water. She set one in front of Eleanor and leaned against the counter. "You okay?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with concern. Eleanor nodded too quickly, unable to meet her eyes. Riley didn't push. Instead, she made a light joke about the family interrogations, earning a small, reluctant smile from Eleanor. The moment felt intimate, natural, too natural. Eleanor stepped back slightly, needing space to breathe. To break the tension, Riley suggested they review their script for the next day, but Eleanor waved it off. Her parents already believed them, more than believed them, actually. They treated Riley like she was someone important, someone Eleanor cherished. And Riley, without trying, embodied that role seamlessly. Eleanor couldn't decide if it was comforting or terrifying. She kept catching herself watching Riley in ways that felt forbidden, as if she were crossing emotional lines she'd sworn not to approach. Later that evening, they settled into Eleanor's childhood bedroom, which had been converted into a cozy guest space. There was only one bed, something Eleanor's mother insisted was no big deal for a couple. Riley tried to hide her amusement when Eleanor froze at the sight. They negotiated sleeping positions, blankets, and pillow boundaries, turning it into an awkward but humorous routine. But beneath the jokes, Eleanor felt nerves prickling her skin. Sharing a bed, even platonically, made the situation far more complicated. When the lights went out, the room fell into a calm, dark quiet broken only by the soft hum of the heater. Eleanor lay stiffly on her side, trying to keep to her half of the bed. Riley, sensing her tension, whispered goodnight in a gentle tone that traveled straight through Eleanor's defenses. Eleanor murmured a reply, eyes wide open in the dark. She told herself everything was under control. But as Riley's steady breathing filled the space between them, Eleanor knew the truth. She was already breaking her own rules. The next morning, Eleanor woke to the faint warmth of Riley's arm draped loosely over her waist. She froze, unsure of how long they had been tangled together. Riley stirred behind her, murmuring something unintelligible before pulling her arm back. The absence of that touch left Eleanor's skin tingling. She sat up quickly, trying to steady her breath. Riley apologized sheepishly, but Eleanor brushed it off, pretending it meant nothing. Pretending was becoming harder every hour. They stepped into the kitchen to find Eleanor's parents already bustling around preparing an oversized Christmas Eve breakfast. Her mother greeted Riley with a long, affectionate hug, while her father asked if she liked coffee sweet or strong. Riley fit into the picture too effortlessly, as if she had always been part of the family. Eleanor watched from a distance, her emotions a quiet storm gathering strength. She felt proud of Riley, protective of her, and painfully aware that none of this was real. During breakfast, Riley reached for Eleanor's hand under the table, giving it a small squeeze when her father made a teasing comment about future wedding plans. Eleanor flinched slightly, though not enough for the gesture to break. Riley's thumb brushed across her knuckles in a comforting circle. It was all for the act, she knew that. And yet, the intimacy felt too genuine, too warm, too dangerous. Eleanor forced herself to smile at her parents, even as her pulse quickened. After the meal, Eleanor's younger cousins arrived, instantly captivated by Riley's charm. Riley helped them decorate sugar cookies, patiently listening to their chaotic stories while Eleanor observed from the doorway. She noticed the way Riley laughed, the softness in her eyes, the kindness that radiated without effort. It wasn't part of the fake dating act, not with kids. This was just Riley being Riley. And it made Eleanor's chest ache with something she was terrified to name. Later, when they stepped outside for fresh air, the winter sky hanging low and pale, Riley nudged Eleanor with her shoulder. "You're quiet," she said, searching her expression. Eleanor shrugged, pretending she was just tired. Riley didn't believe her, but didn't push either. Instead, she slipped her hand into Eleanor's coat pocket, interlacing their fingers out of sight. "We're a team, remember?" she whispered. The words were meant to reassure, but they only deepened Eleanor's confusion. They walked the snowy path behind the house, boots crunching with each step. Eleanor tried to focus on the scenery, on the crisp cold air, on anything but the warmth of Riley's hand holding hers. Each moment with Riley blurred the lines they had set, rubbing away the boundaries that once felt firm and necessary. Eleanor told herself that after Christmas, they would go back to normal. But with every heartbeat, that future seemed harder and harder to imagine. When they returned inside, Eleanor's mother pulled them aside to ask if they wanted to take the annual family Christmas photo together. Riley answered yes enthusiastically, wrapping an arm around Eleanor before she could react. Cameras flashed, relatives fussed, and through it all, Riley held her close. Eleanor tried to stay composed, but her emotions swirled dangerously. The thought crept in quietly, unwelcome and undeniable. If fake felt this real, what did that make her actual feelings? That evening, as the house filled with the glow of Christmas Eve lights, Riley and Eleanor helped set the table for dinner. Their hands brushed more often than necessary, each touch sending a quiet spark through Eleanor's chest. Riley hummed along to a carol playing softly in the background, her voice gentle and warm. Eleanor caught herself staring, captivated by the softness of Riley's smile. She quickly looked away, trying to gather her scattered thoughts. Pretending had never felt so real or so risky. During dinner, Eleanor's aunt asked how they first realized they were meant for each other. Everyone turned to them with eager smiles. Riley jumped into the story effortlessly, weaving a tale of slow-burn affection and undeniable chemistry. Eleanor played along, adding details that made the whole table sigh dreamily. Yet beneath the charming answers and synchronized glances, Eleanor felt something grab hold of her heart. The story they told wasn't true, but it felt like it could be, and that terrified her. After dessert, Eleanor's father surprised the family by pulling out old home movie DVDs. The living room dimmed as Christmas memories played across the screen. Riley sat beside Eleanor on the sofa, the space between them warm and electric. At one point, Riley draped a blanket over their laps, their shoulders brushing softly. Eleanor leaned into her without thinking, sinking into the comfort of Riley's steady presence. For a few fleeting minutes, she let herself stop pretending. She let herself feel. When the movie ended, Riley offered to help Eleanor collect the discarded wrapping paper from earlier gift exchanges. They worked quietly, the tension between them subtle but undeniable. As Eleanor reached for a piece of ribbon, her hand trembled slightly. Riley noticed. She gently touched Eleanor's wrist, concern flickering in her eyes. "Are you okay?" she whispered. Eleanor nodded, though her voice caught in her throat. She didn't know how to handle feelings she wasn't supposed to have. In the hallway, away from family chatter, Riley stopped and faced her. The soft glow of the Christmas tree spilled through the doorway, casting warm reflections around them. "Today felt different," Riley admitted, her voice low, almost cautious. Eleanor's breath hitched, a swell of anxiety rising. She tried to mask it with a nervous laugh, insisting they were just doing a convincing job. But Riley didn't look convinced. She studied Eleanor as if searching for something Eleanor wasn't ready to reveal. Before Eleanor could answer, her mother called their names from the kitchen, breaking the moment. Riley stepped back, but not fully. There was still something in her gaze, something unspoken, heavy with questions neither of them dared ask. Eleanor felt the shift like a tremor beneath her feet. They returned to the living room together, but the air between them had changed. Every shared glance now carried weight, every touch felt charged. Eleanor knew they were crossing into dangerous territory. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Eleanor felt the tension still buzzing inside her. Riley brushed her teeth while humming softly, entirely unaware of the storm unraveling in Eleanor's chest. When they finally slipped under the covers, they lay side by side, silent but wide awake. Eleanor stared at the ceiling, feeling the pull toward Riley grow stronger with every passing minute. She reminded herself of the rules, Riley's rules. Yet paradoxically, Riley seemed closer than ever to breaking them. Eleanor woke early on Christmas morning, the room still dim with the soft blue light of dawn. Riley slept peacefully beside her, one hand loosely curled toward the space between them. Eleanor watched her for a long moment, her heart stirring with emotions she couldn't contain anymore. Riley looked calm, vulnerable even, a stark contrast to the woman who'd made strict rules about their arrangement. Eleanor wondered if Riley was fighting the same quiet battle. And if so, who would break first? When Riley finally stirred awake, her eyes softened as they landed on Eleanor. "Merry Christmas," she whispered, her voice warm, still raspy with sleep. Eleanor's breath caught at the tenderness of it. They shared a long, quiet moment before Riley finally sat up, brushing her hair away shyly. It felt like a scene from a movie, too intimate, too real for pretend. Eleanor pulled herself out of bed quickly, worried she would say something she couldn't take back. Downstairs, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine, the living room glowing with twinkling lights. Eleanor's parents handed out gifts while Riley joined the family circle, blending effortlessly. Each time Eleanor glanced at her, Riley returned the look with a smile that reached her eyes. Their connection felt different today, more open, more fragile. Eleanor tried to ignore the flutter of warmth spreading through her chest, but every small gesture from Riley made it harder. The lines had blurred beyond recognition. When it came time for Eleanor and Riley to exchange their own gifts, Riley handed her a small, neatly wrapped box. Eleanor hesitated before opening it, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with a date they had begun their fake relationship. Eleanor looked up, stunned. Riley shrugged with a shy smile, claiming it was symbolic for the act, but her eyes told a different story. Eleanor felt her pulse race, overwhelmed by the meaning beneath the surface. Eleanor gave Riley her gift next, a soft wool scarf in her favorite shade of deep green. Riley wrapped it around her neck immediately, her expression glowing with genuine happiness. "You remembered," she murmured, almost surprised. Eleanor nodded, her throat tight, unable to explain how carefully she had chosen it. The moment stretched between them, warm and heavy. Eleanor's mother snapped a photo, capturing them mid-smile, sitting too close, radiating a chemistry neither could hide anymore. After gifts, the cousins dragged Riley outside to build a snowman, leaving Eleanor watching from the porch. She saw Riley laughing freely, snowflakes catching in her hair, cheeks flushed with cold. Something about the sight reached deep into Eleanor's chest, loosening emotions she had tried desperately to control. Watching Riley integrate so seamlessly into her world made Eleanor realize how easily she could imagine this, a real relationship, shared holidays, intertwining lives. The thought terrified her. It also tempted her. Eventually, Riley looked toward the porch, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Her gaze found Eleanor instantly, lingering with unspoken meaning. Riley excused herself from the kids and walked toward her, boots crunching on the snow. When she stopped in front of Eleanor, her expression was serious, almost nervous. "We need to talk," Riley said quietly, her voice steady, but her eyes revealing everything. And in that moment, Eleanor knew. The first rule had finally shattered. Eleanor's heart pounded as Riley guided her back into the quiet warmth of the living room. The family was still outside, distracted by snowball fights, leaving the house hushed and glowing. Riley paced for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. Eleanor stood still, bracing herself for whatever truth was about to surface. "I've been trying to ignore this," Riley began, voice unsteady, "but I can't anymore." The words hung in the air like a match, waiting to spark something unstoppable. Eleanor swallowed hard, her palms growing warm despite the chill clinging to her coat. She asked Riley what she meant, though she already sensed the direction this was going. Riley stopped pacing and looked at her with raw honesty. "I'm breaking the rules," she confessed softly. "The ones I made." Eleanor felt her breath catch, the world momentarily narrowing to just the two of them. She tried to speak, but her voice faltered. She wasn't ready, yet she'd hoped for this moment, secretly, painfully. Riley stepped closer, her eyes searching Eleanor's face for any sign of rejection. "I told us to keep things simple. Professional. Pretend," she continued. "But somewhere between the late-night talks and waking up next to you, I stopped pretending." Eleanor's chest tightened, emotion rising in waves she could barely contain. She had feared this, wanted this, avoided it, and longed for it all at once. Riley's hands trembled slightly as she whispered, "I like you. More than I should." Eleanor's mind spun, her thoughts too tangled to form a clear response. She stepped back instinctively, overwhelmed. Riley's expression shifted instantly, hurt, worry, fear. "I'm sorry," Riley said quickly. "I didn't mean to make things complicated. I just couldn't hold it in anymore." Eleanor tried to explain that she wasn't pulling away out of rejection, but out of panic. Her feelings were just as intense, just as real, but she had spent days convincing herself they weren't allowed. Not under this arrangement. They stood in silence, both breathing unevenly, their emotions swirling in the quiet room. Eleanor finally managed to steady her voice. "Riley, I feel something too. I just don't know what to do with it." Riley's eyes softened with relief, though uncertainty lingered. She reached out, gently brushing Eleanor's hand. "We don't have to know," she murmured. Not right now. I just needed you to know where I stand. Eleanor felt the warmth of Riley's touch ripple through her like a promise. Before they could continue, the front door burst open and Eleanor's family spilled inside, laughing, loud, and completely unaware of the emotional earthquake in the living room. Eleanor and Riley quickly stepped apart, though the tension between them remained unmistakably present. Riley forced a smile, her cheeks flushed from more than the cold. Eleanor felt both exposed and grounded, the confession echoing in her mind. There was no returning to the comfort of pretending now. The truth had already taken root. Eleanor excused herself under the pretense of getting more hot cocoa, and Riley followed, though neither spoke as they walked into the kitchen. The moment had shifted them irreversibly, yet the world around them remained blissfully oblivious. Eleanor leaned against the counter, trying to calm the storm inside her. Riley stood beside her, close enough that Eleanor could feel her warmth. "We'll figure it out," Riley whispered gently. For the first time all season, Eleanor believed her. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a strange, delicate balance. Riley and Eleanor moved through the house, as if navigating invisible threads that kept pulling them back toward each other. Every time their eyes met, something warm flickered between them, something new, fragile, and impossible to ignore. Eleanor tried to stay focused on her family's festivities, but her thoughts kept circling back to Riley's confession. She replayed the words again and again, feeling them settle deeper into her chest. Later, Eleanor's mother suggested a walk to the town square to see the Christmas lights. Their group bundled up and headed out, but Riley and Eleanor drifted naturally toward the back, steps falling in sync. The air was crisp, the streets glowing with festive color. Riley kept her hands buried in her pockets, as though resisting the urge to reach for Eleanor's. Eleanor noticed every hesitation, every glance, every breath between them felt heightened now. The silence was full, electric, almost comforting. When they reached the square, families gathered around the towering Christmas tree, its lights shimmering in a palette of gold and emerald. Children laughed, couples kissed under wreaths. The whole scene warmed despite the winter chill. Eleanor watched Riley taking it all in, her face illuminated by the glow. Riley looked peaceful, hopeful, even vulnerable. Eleanor felt a pull toward her, an ache that had grown stronger with every hour. She finally understood she wasn't resisting Riley, she was resisting herself. Eleanor stepped closer, her breath forming soft clouds between them. "About earlier," she began, but Riley gently shook her head, offering a soft smile. "You don't have to say anything tonight," she whispered. "It's Christmas. Let's just be here." Eleanor swallowed, moved by Riley's patience. They stood side by side, watching the tree shimmer. Eleanor wanted to take Riley's hand, to feel something solid instead of the swirl of emotions inside her. But fear still held her still, just barely. Their families regrouped, laughing as they attempted to take a chaotic group photo in front of the tree. Riley stood behind Eleanor, her hand brushing lightly against the back of her coat. It wasn't intentional, probably, but the touch sent a quiet shiver through Eleanor's spine. When the photo was finally taken, Riley's arm slipped naturally around Eleanor's waist, pulling her close. Eleanor didn't move.
She didn't want to.
For once, the pretense didn't matter. This moment felt real. Just before they headed back home, snow began to fall, soft, slow, drifting lazily through the air. Eleanor looked up, then at Riley, who smiled as flakes landed on her lashes. "This night is going to ruin me," Eleanor whispered before she could stop herself. Riley blinked, startled, then touched Eleanor's hand gently. "Only if you let it," she replied. The softness in her voice unraveled the last of Eleanor's defenses. She squeezed Riley's hand, a silent admission neither dared speak aloud yet. On the walk back, they fell behind the group again, walking close enough that their arms brushed with nearly every step. Eleanor didn't pull away. She felt calm, almost weightless, like something inside her had finally stopped fighting. Riley glanced at her, eyes soft and full of something unguarded. "You're different tonight," she murmured. Eleanor exhaled a thin, trembling breath. "Maybe I'm tired of pretending," she admitted. Riley's smile grew slowly, warmly. "Then that makes two of us," she whispered. Back at the house, the family settled into evening traditions, board games, hot cocoa, soft music drifting through the living room. Riley and Eleanor sat together on the floor, knees touching as they helped the youngest cousins assemble a puzzle. Every accidental brush of fingers, every shared smile, carried a new meaning now. Eleanor felt the tension between them humming like a low, steady current. She knew she needed to talk to Riley, truly talk, but the right moment hadn't appeared yet. Eventually, the chaos died down as relatives drifted off to bed. The house grew quiet again, lit only by the soft glow of the tree. Eleanor and Riley remained in the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. Riley pulled the green scarf tighter around her neck, as though seeking comfort. Eleanor watched her, heart aching with the weight of everything unspoken. She took a slow breath, gathering courage. "About earlier," she said softly. "I think I'm ready now." Riley turned toward her, eyes filled with cautious hope. Eleanor's voice trembled as she continued. "The truth is, I've felt something for days. I just didn't know how to handle it. Pretending was supposed to make things easier, but it only made everything harder." Riley's lips parted in surprise, her breath catching. Eleanor reached for her hand, fingers trembling but determined. "I don't want to pretend anymore. Not with you. Not about this." The confession felt like stepping into sunlight. For a moment, Riley said nothing, just stared at her with a look that was soft, stunned, and disarming. Then she lifted Eleanor's hand and held it gently against her chest. "I was so afraid you didn't feel the same," she murmured. "Breaking the rules terrified me, but losing you terrified me more." Eleanor felt warmth bloom through her entire body. Riley leaned in slightly, close enough that Eleanor could feel the warmth of her breath. "Can I kiss you?" she whispered. Eleanor nodded, heart pounding. Riley closed the distance slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Eleanor didn't. Their lips met softly at first, a careful question turning into an answer neither could deny. The kiss deepened, full of days of restraint finally breaking open. When they pulled back, foreheads touching, Eleanor felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being honest at last. Riley brushed her cheek gently. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in the glow of the tree and the warmth of each other's presence. There were still uncertainties ahead, still conversations to have, still realities to face once they returned to New York. But none of that scared Eleanor anymore. Not with Riley beside her. Their fake dating story had unraveled spectacularly, but what remained felt far more real than anything Eleanor had expected to find this holiday season. Later, as they headed upstairs together, Riley intertwined their fingers with a quiet confidence, no longer hiding what she felt. Eleanor squeezed back, a smile tugging at her lips. The rules were gone. The act was over. And as they slipped into the bedroom they no longer needed to share for appearances, Eleanor realized something with absolute clarity. Falling for Riley hadn't ruined the holiday, it had rewritten it. And for the first time, she was excited to see what came next. Later, Eleanor's mother suggested a walk to the town square to see the Christmas lights. Their group bundled up and headed out, but Riley and Eleanor drifted naturally toward the back, steps falling in sync. The air was crisp, the streets glowing with festive color. Riley kept her hands buried in her pockets, as though resisting the urge to reach for Eleanor's. Eleanor noticed every hesitation, every glance, every breath between them felt heightened now. The silence was full, electric, almost comforting. When they reached the square, families gathered around the towering Christmas tree, its lights shimmering in a palette of gold and emerald. Children laughed, couples kissed under wreaths. The whole scene warmed despite the winter chill. Eleanor watched Riley taking it all in, her face illuminated by the glow. Riley looked peaceful, hopeful, even vulnerable. Eleanor felt a pull toward her, an ache that had grown stronger with every hour. She finally understood she wasn't resisting Riley, she was resisting herself. Eleanor stepped closer, her breath forming soft clouds between them. About earlier, she began, but Riley gently shook her head, offering a soft smile. You don't have to say anything tonight, she whispered. It's Christmas. Let's just be here. Eleanor swallowed, moved by Riley's patience. They stood side by side, watching the tree shimmer. Eleanor wanted to take Riley's hand, to feel something solid instead of the swirl of emotions inside her. But fear still held her still, just barely. Their families regrouped, laughing as they attempted to take a chaotic group photo in front of the tree. Riley stood behind Eleanor, her hand brushing lightly against the back of her coat. It wasn't intentional, probably, but the touch sent a quiet shiver through Eleanor's spine. When the photo was finally taken, Riley's arm slipped naturally around Eleanor's waist, pulling her close. Eleanor didn't move. She didn't want to. For once, the pretense didn't matter. This moment felt real. Just before they headed back home, snow began to fall, soft, slow, drifting lazily through the air. Eleanor looked up, then at Riley, who smiled as flakes landed on her lashes. This night is going to ruin me, Eleanor whispered before she could stop herself. Riley blinked, startled, then touched Eleanor's hand gently. Only if you let it, she replied. The softness in her voice unraveled the last of Eleanor's defenses. She squeezed Riley's hand, a silent admission neither dared speak aloud yet. On the walk back, they fell behind the group again, walking close enough that their arms brushed with nearly every step. Eleanor didn't pull away. She felt calm, almost weightless, like something inside her had finally stopped fighting. Riley glanced at her, eyes soft and full of something unguarded. You're different tonight, she murmured. Eleanor exhaled a thin, trembling breath. Maybe I'm tired of pretending, she admitted. Riley's smile grew slowly, warmly. Then that makes two of us, she whispered.